Jump. We launched 2 weeks ago on Kickstarter. I'll give you some insights into how we did, how we pulled the campaign together, and some of the challenges and various information about running a Kickstarter campaign. But first, a little bit about me. I grew up in London. I went to Brunel University to study industrial design. After that, I went to design consultancy in Tangerine, and we were working with big companies like Samsung, LG, to give them direction in what they could do. So it was a lot of us.
Could you hold the microphone closer to your mouth, please?
Yeah, that's better, isn't it? So yeah, after Brunel University, I went to work for Tangerine, and they were a small design consultancy working with some of the biggest manufacturers like LG, Samsung. We were creating stories for them to help them, not only create new products but create meaningful products. It's actually the place that John and I started his career, the VP at Apple, a VP of Apple. After that, I did some consulting with the NHS in commercializing their medical advances. They actually have a medical team that work on physics, and they come up with ways of improving the way that operations are done, and I help them kind of commercialize some of those ideas by turning them into real products rather than just scientific breakthroughs. Then I went to Onto, a startup in London doing green tech or clean tech in energy monitoring. And then I got the offer to come to Hong Kong and work for VTech in the home phone department, basically restyling wireless telephones. But it was a fantastic opportunity to come to Hong Kong. I worked for them for 1.5 years, and it was where I learned kind of what we call functional styling. So when you look at an object, you know how it works and the benefits of that product just from the visual aspects, which is kind of an art in itself. I'm not a master. There are better people, a lot better than me. And then I found Native Union, which started around 3 years ago. And Native Union is a collection of entrepreneurs that got together, and the first product they did was the Moshi Moshi phone. It's a retro handset that plugged into your iPhone. And those guys actually came up with that, and they did very, very well. And in the last 3 years, they've had many more products, but Jump is the latest one. We've decided to launch this one on Kickstarter, which is completely new for us. It really breaks away from the model that they were used to. So, Jump was born out of personal frustration. Basically, living in the city, we would constantly kind of go out after work, go to a meeting, go for some beers, go for dinner, and I always found my phone would run out of battery between 6 o'clock and kind of 9 or 10 o'clock. So I knew I needed a solution, but looking out on the market, there was really nothing there that kind of suited what I wanted. So firstly, the battery jackets on the left, they would, I spent so much money buying the thinnest device, like an iPhone. They spent so much time developing that, and I love it for the fact that it's advanced in all those kind of hardware ways. And I really didn't want to put a big rubber jacket on it. Like, it just didn't make sense. So that was kind of out of the question immediately. Then we looked at charging cables. So you could have a charging cable with you at all times, so you could find an outlet and recharge your phone. But this, again, it didn't really provide the mobile power that we kind of needed in those hours after work. And then power banks. So power banks are what most people use, but in kind of, there was something that didn't quite feel right. But anyway, we took a power bank and tried to use it for a couple of weeks, and basically what we found was that, yeah, when it's charged, it's great. But the problem is that, every day you'd have to come to work and charge your phone and your power bank to ensure that it worked for you when you needed it. But what we found is that most of the time, we would completely forget to charge the power bank and leave it in our bag. So after some thought, we kind of came up with, okay, why doesn't the power bank sit in the middle of the cable? And in doing so, you would kind of remove the need to have multiple cables and to think about charging it, because a phone will charge in a few hours. The rest of the time that your phone's plugged in, it could be charging something else. So that's kind of how Jump came about. So Jump is a small, this is just a prototype. So jump is a small device. It had to be very small, and so small you could fit it in your coin pocket and completely forget about it. So you weren't lugging around this big piece of battery all the time. And what happens is whilst you're charging the phone, there's some smart circuitry inside which will detect the basically the power that's going into your phone, and when it knows that your phone is full, it will then start to charge the batteries inside. So it was kind of we found a way of doing the coming through and making something that could actually fit into your lifestyle. So rather than having to remember to charge another thing when you get into work and you have 1,000 emails to reply to, you could just plug your phone in and it would charge itself. So it was really looking at we felt that this was quite a strong message. So that was where it started, and around 6 months later we had this. So it's a small device, as I said. It basically has the cable built in, so you don't have the room to carry your cable. Your cable doesn't get tied in a knot. It's a neat little thing, and it can provide. We found we could fit 2 batteries in there that would enable you to give you around 4 hours extra talk time. So this is just enough for those situations after work. It's not trying to be something that can kind of get you through a whole camping trip, but it's enough to get you through those hours and make those calls and be able to reply to your partner that you're going to be late or whatever, and get you out of trouble when you need to, or in fact into trouble. So yeah, we launched in Kickstarter 2 weeks ago, and the response has been phenomenal. This was taken last night. I think we're at 4,700 backers now, and broken at $250,000. So it's really a lot more than we expected. So I'll go into some of the challenges. It might be hard to read. I thought it was going to be a bit bigger. So before the campaign starts, we had to get the product. As a product designer, these are normal challenges to us. But so before the campaign started, it was about finalising the product. And during the campaign, it's really been a struggle to try and reach out to press and manage all of the questions that come in every day. I think we've had maybe like 600 or 700 messages that you have to reply to individually, because it's like having, it's actually, how many backers have we got? It's like having 4,700 people who think they're now your boss. They'll just ask you a question in a public forum, and you have to reply in a very political way, telling them that, it's a great input, but unfortunately we can't do this or we can't do that. And it really is quite a stressful thing. You have to take time to think about your answers and consider how those things may come back and bite you in the arse later. So it's really, it's a very stressful period during the campaign to reply to all the emails and do all the comments and reach out to press and ensure production's going forwards. It's a very, very difficult thing, so you have to ensure you have the right people around you to support in those areas and specialise in those areas. Finding it difficult to read this. I pulled this together late last night, so I wanted to look into kind of why I think we've been quite successful. And I think one of the main reasons is everyone's experienced a situation where they've run out of battery. Phones today don't last as long as we would like them to. So, we had to, by coming up with a theme that fits into this problem that resonates with lots of people, it was very easy to get press because, there's a problem everyone has, therefore it will resonate with the readers, and we've come up with a novel solution, so it's kind of newsworthy. So that's why I think we've had some good success in the press without actually having to do too much work to reach out to them. So that's the kind of before bit. When you're building your campaign, the best thing to do is just start, get a page out, and Kickstarter has this fantastic tool of a live preview. So you can send that preview link out to anyone at any time whilst you're building your campaign, and they can see where you are, they can comment on what you've done, and you can iterate and iterate and iterate until you've got something that's more and more polished to get the story really correct, and listen to their feedback and basically build like that. So we went through probably about 20 iterations of the page and 3 or 4 iterations of the video before we launched. So some parts of the video they're like, I don't really understand this. This part's communicated too quickly. This part is really dragging out, and it's not interesting. So the video was kind of almost polished in a way before we launched it. So one of the effects of going on Kickstarter is you draw a lot of people to your campaign. So we've had distributors in Israel, distributors all over the world contacting us to say, we want to stock your product when it's ready. Now, had we done the campaign and not taken high resolution photographs, not had a brand behind it and just said, this is just junk, without a logo, without styling, I don't think we would have been approached by many people to say we want to stock your product afterwards, because they want to stock a brand, not just a product. Cater to your customer segments. So at the beginning, it was quite easy to get Kickstarters to back us because they know how Kickstarter works. But now we're getting articles in more kind of national news. People don't know what Kickstarter is. So you have to design your campaign to cater for those people, because we're driving lots and lots of views, but even people that are quite tech savvy are like, oh, have they all run out? Can I still get one? You've made your goal, is it still open? You need to try and cater your campaign for those people that haven't done Kickstarter. There are some people there that just want to be involved in the project and don't care too much about actually receiving the product. And they're very, very active on your board, so you need to design it for them and cater some messaging to them. You need to cater some messaging to so different kind of smartphone users. So obviously we have Samsung, kind of Android users, micro USB users, and iPhone users. So we had to ensure that some of the photography had Samsungs in as well as iPhones, so that because otherwise you're going to get hundreds and hundreds of questions about it, and it's going to take up all your resources. You should be focusing on perhaps reaching out to press instead of answering all these questions that keep recurring. Yeah, I think that's the customer segment bit. Oh yeah, this was one from Kevin, who will be speaking in this panel. Do it in US dollars. So basically, you have the choice from Kickstarter to do it as from the UK, from the US, from Canada, from Australia. I think that's all it's open to at the moment. And had we done it in pounds, I don't think we would have got many backers from the US. They would have to do a mental calculation before they back. Fuck, that sounds really good. No, but I wouldn't know how much it was in euros, perhaps coming from Hong Kong, or so. You do it in US dollars because they're going to be the people backing the project, and it would just make it easier to do. Yeah, I'm sure there'll be lots more questions, but that's just a brief overview of some of the important things I can think of tonight.
Great, thank you, Chris. Thanks a lot. Okay, Marvin?
Hey guys, I'm Martin, founder of PhoneJoy, and I don't know if you know what we've been doing, so I have a few slides just explaining our product. Basically, it's a wireless Bluetooth game controller that has a sliding mechanism. This doesn't work, Casey. You should make technology, So that's basically a sliding mechanism. I have the product here as well, but it's difficult for you to see it from far back. So basically it has a sliding mechanism that allows you to attach any smartphone of any size. Next slide. So you just put your phone inside, you turn it on, next slide, and then you can play 3D gaming content that you would normally only play on your console, just on your phone, anywhere you want. So I'm here actually not to talk too much about the product, but much more about why we did this and how we did it. Not so much about the Kickstarter details. I think that's what some of the other speakers like Chris have been already covering. So for us, the story actually started here in the Pearl Endeavor. Next slide. Started with me and my co-founder Alexander Morris. I'm originally from Germany and he's from Switzerland. And I was actually working in trading of consumer electronics, and he had been working for Schneider Electric, a big European electronics company. And we met actually through studying Chinese, and he was helping me out with like some of the factory visits. And next slide. during that time, that was about 2 years ago, we saw, all this craziness on the metro, not only in Hong Kong, but also in Guangzhou and Seoul. Everywhere Asians were using their phones. They didn't have computers anymore, they didn't use consoles, they were just using their phones. And what were they doing? They were not only just texting, they were playing games. That's actually where a lot of the revenue is coming now on the market. And we thought like, okay, so why stand up game controller or something like that you could play like those, legacy console games on your phone? So we were researching, we were looking on Amazon, we were looking on eBay, we were even looking on Taobao and Alibaba, and there was no game controller. Like, why didn't Sony or Microsoft do this? We thought, and they were like, wait a minute, maybe we can actually do something like that ourselves. So what we did, next slide, is actually hacking something together. So we went like to one of the markets in Guangzhou, we bought an off-the-shelf, knock-off PlayStation controller, and we basically ordered our own PCBs. We hand-soldered some off-the-shelf components on them, like a regular Bluetooth module, and what we came up was the first phone jack controller, which is basically our minimum viable product. We didn't know at the time, we just did this for ourselves because we wanted this. Because we always had this passion for gaming. I started with a Game Boy, I had a Nintendo, I had a Super Nintendo, then I had the PlayStation. I always wanted this, my parents had to lock away the console just so I could go outside and play with other kids. But I just ended up going to my friends and playing at their place. So probably they kind of regret it now, because now this actually turned out to become our business. So I made this, I did a YouTube video, got covered by a lot of blogs, we got more than 50K views, and then people started asking, dude, where can I buy this? And I was like, maybe just put it on eBay. So I put 20 on eBay, and within 24 hours they were all sold. And then I was like, to Alex, shit, now we actually have to build 20 devices. That's how it started, and then shortly after we built a website, and then we were selling about the hundreds. We recruited our friends in China just to build these. And then we got all this feedback from users that they wanted to have, like a mechanism that they could attach their phone with, that they had better button control, all these little things. And then we said, like, maybe you can actually turn this into a business. And then we started concepting. That was like a 5-month stage where we had the first prototype. We used the same kind of technology at that time. Next slide. And then after 7 months, we actually had a working prototype. It wasn't a really well-working prototype, like some of the buttons got stuck, and this one actually died after a week. So it was terrible. It was terrible. But it kind of, it projected our vision, what we wanted to achieve. And at that time, Kickstarter really took off. That was in 2012, I think. And you had all these amazing Kickstarter projects that allowed people to get funding when they didn't get funding from traditional investors. So they went to Kickstarter, like Pebble, like Ouya, or like Oculus Rift, and they all raised like millions of dollars. And we're like, wow, this is a really good opportunity. Maybe we just take a video and come up with a few pictures of our product, and maybe people actually like the product and back it, and we get some money to build it. So that's what we did. We invited our friend from Germany over to actually shoot a video. We recruited our friends to act as models. And after 2 weeks, we had a video. 2 weeks later, we put together the graphics, the photos, and all that. And Kickstarter didn't make it really that easy for us because they had all these fancy new rules. You need to have a working prototype, and so they required us to make new videos. They kept rejecting us. But after 2 months, we finally had the, next slide, campaign live, which was a great moment. Like, it was a rush for us, because we got covered by all these tech blogs like TechCrunch and Gadget, and it was amazing. That was actually the first time we met Casey in a Hive, because it was just really us as a two-man team working there. Like, next slide, I was like, pushing out new Kickstarter updates, creating graphics, and I was answering all those, comments that we got on Kickstarter, which is not really that easy because everybody has like an idea and they want you to fulfill it, but then you think like, it's not that easy actually to pull that off, and then you have to put it to answer all these questions. But then after 1 month, we actually ended up raising 70K on Kickstarter and 5K on PayPal, because now everybody has a credit card, which you need for Kickstarter. So that's like an additional way to get funding. And then it actually went really started for us, because at that time you only had a prototype, which was really expensive to build, by the way. We spent like $500 just to build one little controller. That's obviously not something that you can mass produce and sell to somebody. So what you need is to go to the factory and, next slide, should have done it a lot earlier, actually. We met a really great guy. He's called Surya Riswara. He's the founder of a hardware accelerator in Shenzhen. And his first law of lean hardware is that you should always have contact with the factory. And we didn't have that first, so our product was kind of over-engineered, not ready to mass manufacture. What do I mean by that? It's like we have all these little components, and some of them they're not really easily to mass manufacture. You can easily use tooling, CNC machines, to make those, but you can't use molds, which, next slide. This is a mold. This is like a massive steel block where you inject plastic under high pressure into this form. So this is just for 2 little back cases of our controller. This steel block is really just for the back case. And we need 6 of those. And they can't be optimized. You actually need engineers in the factory who make these. And that is not an easy process. Like when you look at those small parts, they have really, really, really low tolerances, like to the 10th of a millimeter, and otherwise it wouldn't be flush. And that was such a major headache for us to get those right. It took us like several months to perfect the process until we had this flush sliding mechanism. Next slide. And then more went wrong. Like with every startup, I think a lot of things went wrong. At that time, we were outsourcing our firmware of our microcontroller. What is a microcontroller? It's the brain of your hardware device. And we outsourced that to a Chinese manufacturer, and they screwed up big time. So they ran off with the code, the code they had that produced really high latency, and when you have high latency with a game controller, it's useless. So we were back to square one. We actually had to bring our friend Dale from the US over to Hong Kong to help us out to build a new code and all that. That took us another 2-3 months. And at the same time, we had the same issue with our software, because we're not just building a hardware device, we also have an app on Android and iOS. And we were first trying to outsource that as well, since we're not software guys. And that went wrong too. So we ended up, next slide, actually bringing somebody over from Beijing to actually help us with the development of the software. So, next slide. All that cost a lot of money, so by summer, a couple months later, we were out of money. And that is really the valley of death of hardware. Like that period where you get the funding, maybe through Kickstarter, and where you can actually ship the product and make more money. And this was a really difficult time. We had to let people go, we had to raise more money to get the project going. But why did we do it? Because we really wanted to make the project happen, because this is really our passion. I mean, that's what's been driving us all along. Like to see this game controller in the stores, to actually make mobile gaming better, that's what's been driving us. And that's why we're still here, I think. Just to give you an idea, like the stage, this was the first slide that we came up with, like end of 2012. That was the second one, which still wasn't quite right, so we had to perfect it over, and that's the final one. So as you can see, it's a lot more polished. And with hardware, you face this problem. You can't just, like software, push out an early prototype and then you perfect it over the course through software updates. You don't have that with hardware. It's either in stores and you get good reviews, or you don't, and then it's a fail. And so that was like a major headache for us. Like all these little problems that came up with so much frustration. And next slide. But now we finally made it. Last December we went into test production, and 2 weeks ago we went actually into mass production. We still have a couple of issues, like always, because hardware is hard. Our manufacturer is screwed up again. So now it's kind of delayed until after Chinese New Year. But things are happening. And I think a good advice for anyone who wants to try hardware is that you need a lot of endurance, because you depend on a lot of third parties. Like we have several different suppliers. Like we have a steel tool manufacturer, we have a mold manufacturer, we have a PCB factory, we have an assembly factory, all these different parts that come together. And if one of them screws up, then your whole project is delayed. And that's really what's painful. Yeah, that's my little presentation. I hope I could share some useful advice. Thank you.
Thanks, Martin. All right, Kevin, come on up. Please pass it off to Kevin. Kevin is
everyone. My name is Kevin. Since I became a father 3 years ago, I've been looking for a way to take a picture of my dog easily and without the help of others. After 2 years of search, I found nothing in the market that fulfills my need. That's why I decided to build one on my own. Shutter is a remote shutter release for your smartphone. Its patent technology supports iPhone, iPad, iPod Touch, Samsung Galaxy S3, Note 2, etc. Having a shutter with your smartphone can be done with a couple of clicks. Taking self-portrait or good photo can never be easier. Shutter has a small form factor that you can carry as a key train, making sure that you can capture every precious moment arise in your daily life. Over the past 6 months, our team has been working side by side to create the best photo-taking experience. Please help us to get shutters into your hands.
Yeah, a lot of people ask me what is Shutter, and then does it have camera in it or whatever. So yeah, I think it's more rational to have it like demonstrate this video, and then you understand what Shutter is. And yeah, I'm pretty much the only guy which is local in Hong Kong, and then had a Kickstarter campaign here. And then I was born in Hong Kong. I don't have any lot of I don't have U.S. citizenship, so I started off with Indiegogo, and then we were covered in the newsletter in the first page of Indiegogo, but still it's we only got half of funding, and that is flexible funding. So I got the money, but I still have to deliver. And then I had a friend, and then we started a US company, and then we start the Kickstarter campaign because we didn't succeed. So this time we raised 4 times the money, and then we were covered by a lot of press because in Indiegogo it's we're virtually nowhere. And we got really high positive review from blog because we actually sent out samples to them, and then they actually review it and then say very good things about us. And then, can we play this video? Oh, yeah.
Let me show you how this works. This is effective. Basically, you choose your to your phone. And then we set up the iPod here. So it becomes, your phone now becomes your lens, and then it starts up. I absolutely love this. I want to put one in everyone's stocking this year.
Hey, you know, you have a smartphone right here? Well, it is. Well, then you're never without a high-quality digital camera, and you never have to miss that perfect picture of yourself looking your best. But it even takes a tortured grip and long arm. It's a sweet little device that pairs via Bluetooth with your smartphone to control the camera app's shutter. So your arm is no longer the limit, and people might actually think you have some friends.
It works by Bluetooth to trigger your camera app on the iPhone, iPad, or Android from up to 30 feet away. It's great for selfies, group photos, don't know they're being photos. You know, you're okay with the ethics of it.
And this is good. It's called Shutter, and it's by Movie Labs. Okay, so this is actually the
This is a handheld little device. It's super easy. I'm the most technically uninclined person on the planet. I did this in 3 seconds. You can actually use a little handheld device here with a shutter. So I'm going to have you hold that up. We're going to take a little picture. You click. Josh, get out of here! Get out of here! And we're holding it right now, but it actually, we're done. But it actually eliminates you holding your arm. There's a stand that comes with this that you can stand back up to 30 feet.
Look at that. Shutter. It redefines self.
Yes, pretty much like that. So yeah, and we did have a lot of coverage, but it's pretty much after our Kickstarter campaign. Yeah, and then yeah, probably it's not a lot of people in Hong Kong, native Hong Kong, they got into Kickstarter, so I got covered by a lot of my local press as well. And right now, yeah, it's really really a milestone for us because Shutter is now on smart home, and as you know, smart home is like they have a lot of store here, and they really pick from like 40 or different product, and then pick us as one of the accessories they carry in smart home, and I don't know if anyone heard of that. And yeah, it's yeah. Because yeah, I'm a father and I'll have a new baby coming. I know exactly what. So right now, up to now, we don't have a fabulous campaign Kickstarter. It's like less than 100K. It's pretty much like almost 100K. But after that, we did have pretty good execution. We shipped everything in 2 months, and people like that. And then we put money in the campaign, PR campaign, and then like we finished the campaign on August, and then right now by December we ship almost like to 20,000 units. So it's not bad for a like one-person company. And why crowdfunding? A lot of people ask about this question, and then a lot of people approach me. Okay, I want to do Kickstarter, I want to do Indiegogo, but that's the first question that I ask back. Why crowdfunding? Do you really need the money? Or is it only the money that you want? In fact, it's like, if you just want money, then you may not want to go do crowdfunding because you'll probably be late. And then when your product being shipped, a lot of people, you're gonna see a lot of public that like undercut you as half of the price. So yeah, think about it. Why do you want to do crowdfunding? It's not just about money. So another question a lot of people want to ask is that Indiegogo or Kickstarter? Because I ran through both campaigns, so maybe I'm pretty qualified to answer this question. Indiegogo is pretty flexible, and then Kickstarter is about publicity. Indiegogo, anyone can post anything. You only need a PayPal account. And then no screening, you can have flexible patching, which means that, okay, I can, like, my goal is $1 million, but if only I got $10, I still have money. And they have much less active backers. They don't, just like what Chris says, like, when you're on Kickstarter, you got so many emails and comments every day, and then you don't want to piss off them. But in Indiegogo, nobody really cares. and then there are too many rubbish, and then people say that, okay, I invent a time machine and whatever, and then suddenly $100. And that's why it's like bloggers are unwilling to cover that. And then yeah, I pitch them to them and say that, okay, Indiegogo, well, something like that, and then you never heard anything from them. And then from Indiegogo, in fact, you can change anything after the campaign. You can change your patch, you can change your comment, you can change your update. One problem with Kickstarter is that, okay, when you post anything, it's like comment and updates or whatever, Chris is laughing, right, smiling. And because he understands the pain in the ass. If you write something that pisses off someone, you cannot delete it. And then if someone posts a bad comment on that, some people are like that. They're like terrorists. They spend $1 patch a campaign and then write bad thing about you, and then before the end of the campaign, they withdraw that $1. And horrible. It's like, but in Indiegogo you can delete anything. Okay, you don't like that guy, then delete the comment. Okay, and flexible or fixed funding. Yeah, because a lot of people like Indiegogo because it's flexible. If you don't get the you don't reach your goal, you still get money. But the problem is, if you get the money, do you have enough money to make products? That's one really important thing that you want to ask yourself. And even for fixed funding, are you really raising money enough for you to make the product? And as what Martin said, it's like a lot of projects ran out of money in the middle of the production because they didn't anticipate that there's so many shit happening and just being effed by so many things. Okay, so Kickstarter, a lot of people didn't realize that it is such a high traffic website. It's like traffic is like I don't know, it's like the Alexa ranking is like 700 whatever, and then yeah, got a lot of people going in. They thought it's Amazon, just buy things. Because I did a statistic and my backers, on average they patch 47 projects. It's ridiculous. It's like, why do you want to patch so many projects and then maybe half of them really didn't deliver? And then you might be covered without pitching to Blocker, but I think the chances get lower and lower right now. In Indiegogo, yeah, you pitch to them and then you virtually got no chance to be covered. So Kickstarter, yeah, a lot of people say about that. You need to be like US, UK, Canada, Australia, or New Zealand. And be careful the currency. Yeah, as Chris know about that, because you don't want that. You don't want people to do a lot of calculation. And one thing, you might be rejected for no reason. A lot of friends of mine, they said, okay, Kickstarter just reject the project because you spend so much money making videos, prototype, and then they said that they just say that, okay, well, it's not a policy to say why we reject that, but we cannot let you in. Yeah, and then you got no choice to like defense because there's no mechanism for you to defense. You can write like 1,500 characters in the email and say why you reject me or why I want to be part of it, and there's no violation of policy. But the problem is they didn't told you which policy that you violate, and then how do you defend yourself? And then one thing, do you want to set up a company or personal account? And the worst story that I heard of is that someone set up a personal account instead of set up a company in the States, and then, yeah, he didn't deliver, and one of his backer is a lawyer, and then he was sued, and then he ran into bankruptcy. Okay. And think about all the kinds of courses, and about the tax that you set up a company in US, about, yeah, your product, it is like high value product, and then your shipment, and then it may complicate the customs, and you may got lost in delivery or whatever, because these are the costs that you haven't built into the price, the patch. And then last thing is users are really, really engaging, and it might be a good thing or bad thing, because if they say bad thing about you, okay, you just want to kill them. And I'm not too sure a lot of people agree with that, but I really believe that 2012 is the best time to Kickstarter. By that time, yeah, Pebble was like, everyone's talking about Pebble, and Nifty Mini Drive, in fact, is like yeah, a friend of mine. They raised like about $4,000 in Indiegogo, and then $4,000, and then 100 times in Kickstarter without any promotion. They did no promotion at all, but people just cover it because it's the right timing. It's just after, just like pretty much right overlap with the period of Pebble. So a lot of people a lot of bloggers just want to cover anything on Kickstarter, so they got really lucky. But the problem is that they deliver 3 times, and then yeah, and probably they fail all 3 deliveries. And another question is, how long should I post? Kickstarter recommends 30 days, and yeah, a lot of projects like this, yeah, you got like a pretty good first week or first few days, but in the course of the campaign, you really didn't get a lot of backers. But if you really spend money on marketing or PR or approaching a blogger, you may get more patch in the middle of the course. So yeah, longer may not be better. And longer sometimes means that your copycat may have more time to copy you. So, so how ready you are, I don't know whether Pen Type A, those guys raised so much money in Kickstarter, it's like $500 million. And then one of the consultant, the manufacturer consultant, screwed them up. And then virtually do the same thing and then post it on the cloud. And yeah, be really, really aware of that, those guys. Like, okay, those people are helping you and do all the manufacturing and stuff, but those are guys who stab you in the back and undercut your products. And another thing thing is how ready you are means that Pressy, they're really amazing. Yeah, I just do screen cap in the middle of campaign. I think at the end they raised like 700K. And then look at this. It's like delivered March 2014. Okay, it was like half a year ago, I believe. And okay, 360 is a listed company, Qihoo, in NASDAQ, and then they copy it right away. So virtually, it's like if you're popular in Kickstarter, you're just checking your copycat. So if you're not ready, you may really want to think twice before posting a project, because you just give them a chance to copy you, and then especially there's so many like those kind of like even listed companies do that. So trademark and patent infringement, yeah, sometimes it's got like, even though you're running a good campaign, in the middle of the campaign, Kickstarter just told you that, okay, someone filed a disposal saying that you have some trademark or whatever infringement that we have to cancel or put your campaign into a host, whatever. And you don't even know who filed that deposit to you, who filed the campaign to you. But it might happen, and you have to take that risk. And then maybe you do more like research to see what kind of patent or trademark that you might be infringing before you post it. Otherwise, it's like, even though, okay, I got funded in 2 days or whatever, but in the 2 days before the end of the campaign, it's just like to put it off, and total loss. And my recommendation, yeah, the first one is, I think, yeah, you really need a professional video with native speaker. That's, I think, a lot of people told me that you could have raised like 5 times more money if you have native speaker, and then you're not on the video. Well, it's something that is true, okay. And then you hire a professional graphic designer and photographer. It's like, I do everything by myself, and I sucks. And LinkedIn and Twitter buffer before your campaign. Yeah, don't do it within the campaign, because you don't really have time. You have like 30 days or 45 days. That's not enough for you to approach the blogger and send them samples. Do that beforehand. And for me, I did quite a lot of prototype and send them to bloggers, and then they have a first-hand review. But well, it depends. Of course, it depends whether you want to do it or not. And stretch goal, planned it. A lot of people complain about stretch goals because when you are on Kickstarter, you just want, okay, I just hope that my project got funded. But the day that you got funded, people will ask about stretch goal, and then you didn't really plan for that. They ask for like different colors, they ask for more accessory, and it may really disrupt your delivery plan. For example, it's like someone asked for a keychain holder, and I have to accept that because people are like complaining, people are leaving my project, and I said, okay, if I raise 100K, I will give out the keychain. And I feel lucky that I didn't raise 100K. Because that keychain company that I approached, they didn't deliver anything to me. Like, yeah, they sucked. And I'm really lucky because if I really have to distribute that keychain, my project will be delayed by at least 2 months. So think about that before your project, and be prepared for negative feedback and be political in answering that. So, and yeah, and what's next after Kickstarter is most important. It's like Kickstarter is just the beginning. And we have the workflow production, as Martin said. Packaging is very important for retail. And distribution is the most important thing. You just don't want your project to be just a Kickstarter project and just end there. You really want to sell them. Some Kickstarter projects may not be hugely successful, just like the Holoclip. They raised like 60K, I think. But right now, I think they're like a $100 million company right now because they have very strong sales, very good distribution, very good marketing, and that's the most important thing. And customer service and patent, whatever, yeah, these are things that you need to worry about. And it's pretty much that.
Great, thanks. Thanks, awesome. All right, well, we'll do a Q&A with everybody after on the last one. So I'd like to invite now Daniel from 3Doodler. And
give you background, we're very happy that Daniel's here today because he's one of the most successful Kickstarter campaigns, not just in Hong Kong, but of all time. And when you see that what he's doing, you'll also want to buy it immediately. So,
thank you.
Here you go.
Very flattering. I can't top the pregnancy line. Blown it for a real. I'm also setting up a therapy group for all of us afterwards to talk about factories and backers and comic books. Okay, so 3Doodle. I'm going to take you through what it is, firstly, if you haven't heard of it, and how it came about. And then I'll jump to the bit that you're probably most interested in, which is how we got 2.3 million in funding on Kickstarter. I also want to draw a very big line between what the keynote was talking about, which is equity crowdfunding and Kickstarter crowdfunding. And I think you made a very good point. You guys, if you're doing a Kickstarter, need to think about tax and how this is going to be dealt with in an accounting point of view. You don't need to think about regulatory problems. That's what you have to worry about if you're doing an equity crowdfunding, just to clarify. So 3Doodle is the world's first 3D printing pen. What does that mean? It means it's a pen that draws in plastic. You can literally lift this pen off the paper, having put plastic filament inside it, and draw solid objects. We launched on Kickstarter just over 11 months ago. Towards the end of last year, Time Magazine voted it one of the top 25 inventions of the year, which we weren't expecting and were flattered by. And this is the pen itself. There is now one of these in a taxi cab going around Hong Kong. Because I dropped it on the way here. So I don't have my demo unit, sorry. We do have lots of YouTube videos, and I have some plastic filament. So the way it works is you put the plastic in the back, and it uses ABS or PLA plastic. If anyone wants to geek out about plastic later, we can. And then you either press the fast or the slow, and start drawing things, wrong way, in 3D. So this is from our Kickstarter video. This is Max, one of my co-founders, drawing a cube. We've come a long way since then. There you go. And you can now like flick that, push it, pick it up, play with it. Or make something like this, which was made by Pete, one of my other co-founders. And he took the plans for the Red Baron and drew this triplane in pieces and then joined it together using the pen. That's by me on the left. I'm not artistically talented, so anyone can become creative with this. And then this is one of my favorites, which got stolen at a show in London. It's Peter Rabbit. That's how good it was. This is what happens when real artists get involved, which Typeface always goes. This pen is very versatile. We look at it as the tool of the 21st century. You can use it if you're an architect to do an early draft of a building before you go to CAD and 3D, expensive 3D printing models. Or you can just use it to create little motorbikes, or I think pieces of art like this. So this actually has a metal wire in it, and the swing moves. And then these are some other artists we worked with as well. One of them was really clever and worked out you could use the hot tip to kind of meld it into the plastic and contour the face to create mini statues and figurines. So do go online, do check out some of our videos, because what you can do with this pen is amazing. How did it come about? So Peter Max, my co-founders, were in the toy invention industry, and they were prototyping concepts using a 3D printer, and the printer made a mistake. And Pete held his hand to his head and said, I can't believe it's done it again, plus a few expletives. If only I could take the printer head off and just correct the gap in the print. And he did. That's what they did. They stripped down their UPS printer and put together the teacup, which was the very first 3Doodle. They even branded it. And it's got a little handle, and they were like blowing on it to cool the plastic down, and it worked. It worked horribly, but it worked. And then several iterations later, we had this, which was a bit gun-like, and we said was a no-no. For obvious reasons. And then the pen form factor. Now the real unique part of the 3Doodle, apart from the fact that it's a 3D printing pen, is the fan system at the back. And that's taking in cool air from outside and blowing it down the pen to cool down both the pen, but also the plastic that comes out so that it hardens straight away. So you can hold the plastic, it's extruded immediately, and it does harden almost immediately. So like I said, before we get to what we did on Kickstarter, we put it on Kickstarter last February. And we ended up raising $2.3 million on Kickstarter. And actually, that was really in the space of a few days, because we had to kind of choke the demand a bit by choking supply, because we just would have had to produce too many pens. And I think one of the things I'm going to get to later is work within your means. And we knew we'd have to produce 25,000 pens. And I think on day 3, when we had like 1.5 million, it went from this moment of jubilation to like, yes, we're loaded, to, oh no, we have to produce 25,000 pens. And amazingly, we never did the math. Like, we never thought, right, how many pens is $2 million? We calculated everything else, but at no point did we think, what total amount equals what number of pens? It was pretty stupid. This is actually quite useful. So you showed KickTrack earlier, and it's a really good website. You should all check it out. KickTrack's made like a little industry for itself on putting data together on Kickstarter projects. Very good for your research project. And you can see the curve. You can't on here, but most Kickstarter projects, the curve goes straight up and then it levels out. And that's pretty much what happened with us as well. So, Kickstarter do's and don'ts. There is a misnomer, I think it's pretty much gone now, that you can just throw a project up there and it'll get you $1 million. It's not true. I think that's pretty much a guaranteed way to not get it. You have to prepare. We originally wanted to put the Kickstarter project up before December and decided that was a terrible idea. You've got to pick your timing right, and you've got to take your time. And we then took 3 months planning the project, planning out the page, the videos, the product offering, getting ourselves closer to having a launch-ready prototype. And it's really important for reasons I'll get to in a minute, and you highlighted one as well. You want to close the gap between you and production, because that's a gap that other people are going to exploit, particularly copycats. But more than that, you want to have a project out there that looks good and that people can believe in, and they believe you're going to deliver, because that's going to help your momentum as well. So the more prepared you are, the more you'll handle the torrent of craziness that will hit you, but also the better you'll be prepared after the Kickstarter closes. So into the nitty-gritty, how much more ready can your product be? And I put up here in yellow what I think are the main stages of product development for a Kickstarter company. So I mean, you've got the concept stage where you've had the idea. You then develop a prototype. It's normally handmade with love and care and can never be mass-produced. You run what is a fairly arbitrary costing exercise. You're picking numbers out of the air. You should speak to other Kickstarter backers, project managers and find out what their costs were like. And then that's pretty much where we stopped. We launched a Kickstarter just around this point. So we'd done the costing exercise to the extent we could. We hadn't tooled up. We hadn't got assembly ready. We had identified a factory. So we knew we'd be able to hit the ground running once we got the money from Kickstarter. In an ideal world, if I was going to do this again, I would want to launch my Kickstarter here after I've tooled up. You don't want to get too deep into a financial hole. You want to be as far along as you can. If you think about tooling from the point of view of time, it takes at least 30 days. If you think about getting something assembly ready, it probably took us about 3 months. Like, you're taking a handmade prototype and working out how you can streamline that product, minimize the number of pieces, and minimize the way it's put together so that it can be mass-produced not in the ones and twos, but in the tens of thousands, and hopefully one day in the hundreds of thousands. And if you have the money and the support to get tooling done, that's where I would launch your Kickstarter. Because then you know you can deliver on it. You know what your costing is going to be. And then what you've got to go through after that is the engineering prototype, the production prototype, and the full production run. And we would have minimized our gap. So we closed the Kickstarter in March, and we shipped our first units just on time in September. We would have closed it to 3 months from about 6. So think very carefully about that, and think about where you can get those funds from. If you don't necessarily believe in your product, and you haven't had proof of concept from other companies you've spoken to, you might want to stop earlier on. But if you know you've got a dead cert, and you're still determined to do it on your own, get as far as you can. It's going to help you a lot. The project page, I want to just cover quite briefly. I've taken a snapshot of ours, and I'm just going to go through kind of some high-level bits. The video is incredibly important. It's one of those things that's going to get syndicated everywhere, left, right, and center. And it's also the first thing people see on your page. And it's the first thing, and maybe the only thing they're going to watch. And in our minds, you have about 20 seconds to grab people's attention. We probably left it about a second too long, but we just about survived. There's this very funny comment on our YouTube channel, this guy saying, I don't get it, it's just a glue gun and you draw flat. And then he clearly got to 21 seconds, and there's a new comment saying, whoa. And yeah, try and get that wow moment in there earlier. Don't lead in with pictures of you and your founders. Don't lead in there with like what inspired you. Get the product in front of people as soon soon as possible and get the unique aspect of that product in front of them. Max, I think, has to take a lot of credit for like the video and the page. He read tens and tens of hundreds of Kickstarter pages before he wrote ours and launched ours. And he decided what he liked about the ones that succeeded. And we made a list of what we thought were the reasons why the ones that failed. And that was a helpful exercise. We looked at ones that were just wildly successful, whether they had anything to do with us or not, and then we looked at ones that were similar to us. We took the description extremely carefully. We tried to redraft it again and again and again to make it shorter and shorter, and Chris made that point. You do have this ability to let other people see it and view it and preview it, and that's really important. You get sucked into your own universe of understanding what you've written, and then you'll show it to someone who's never seen it before, and they just won't understand the language you're using. Put it in front of strangers. We did the same thing with the pledge levels, and I actually backed Jump this morning. I think it's a great project. And you guys have done exactly what we did, which was we tried to keep the pledge levels as small as possible. I'm a big believer in that first page view when you open your browser, and you need to present as much information above the line as you can, because most people won't ever scroll down. So I've seen projects where they have like a description of the pledge level, which has been as long as our whole description for the project itself. It's a non-starter. Like, you have no idea what you're backing and getting behind. You don't know what you're buying, basically. It's still a purchase decision. And you have no idea what the different tiers are. And in truth, you're trying to upsell people as well. So we had a pen with a little bit of plastic and then a pen with a lot of plastic. We made sure the pen with a lot of plastic appeared without you having to scroll down. So like, really think about the user interface if you want to look at it that way. The pledge level, I'm going to skip past images, just pepper it with them and make them look good. It's a no-brainer. The pledge level, ours was $30,000, and we raised 2.3. So I think the amazing statistic is that we were 7,000% overfunded. The 30,000 was BS. I mean, let's be honest about it. We needed more than that. We knew we were going to get more than that. We didn't know how much we were going to get, but it was the minimum we were willing to run this project at, and the minimum we were willing to raise. You know, if it succeeded. It's basically the cost of tooling. That's what it was for us. And we were willing to take this to the next level and give up our time without salaries, and you know, as a motley crew, make it work as long as we could pay for tooling. Because if we had a successful Kickstarter, which for most people means it's getting over a few thousand or tens of thousands, and we could pay for tooling, then we could then show that we could get to mass production, and then do a licensing deal or start getting some distribution deals going. We didn't have to do that. We went from a position of being like 3 guys with a Kickstarter to building a company overnight, which is awesome because you're completely independent. But think carefully about what your level is. People have come to me and said, what should our level be? And they've shown me their budget, and they've budgeted in like their salaries for the next half year. It's just, don't do it. Like, no wonder you're asking for $300,000 for something in a space that's never raised that money on Kickstarter before. In truth, we probably needed about 150 to 180 to break even on a small run, based on the factory MOQ. But the low target was important because you want that early momentum, and that became the story. Like, it became the story that we broke through it in something like 6 seconds. So, play the game. Getting press with a cute photo cat. So a lot of people ask me how we got the press we got, and we're still getting a lot of it. And I'm going to be entirely honest, we did have support from a PR firm, and it's nothing to be ashamed of, but we did it on a very low budget. There's a PR firm who I worked on with my last startup, and we did what I call PR light, which is basically we went to them and said, look, we're going to launch this thing, we've spoken to press already, they seem interested, but there's no way we can handle this on our own. It's just too much work, and if this blows up, we're going to need your help. So their job was to help extend our mental bandwidth and come up with good ways to get the press's attention, because we were flat out, we didn't have a spare brain cell to go around. So their job was literally to help us think through it, to introduce us to some key targets, and to then proofread and just sanity check what we're putting out there. It wasn't a heavy job for them, so they could do it on a low fee. So if there is a firm you like and know, try and pitch that to them. Like, you won't end up paying for the amount, which is good news. And they'll probably do it, because if you're successful, then they're going to have a client for life after that. So with the press, we got in really early. So we launched in February, but we got in, started talking to them back in December. Please don't leave it last minute. I think a lot of people message the press like the day before they launch their Kickstarter, and these guys are getting thousands now of emails a day from startups they've never met, and entrepreneurs they've never met, and then they're getting a whole load from people they have met who think they're their best friends and can ask them for a favor, which they can't. Just get ahead of the curve. They'll respect it a lot. If you tell the press, look, this is embargoed, we're launching it in 2 to 3 months. Here are some images, here's a video. Please don't talk about it, but are you interested? They're going to respect the fact that you respected them enough to go to them early. If you are completely cold calling them and they're not interested in your area, but you happen to have an email address, keep the email really short. Like a one-liner like, hey, we're launching a 3D printing pen, here's a video on it. Not sure if this is your thing. Do you think anyone else at TechCrunch and Gadget, Gizmodo would be interested? It's really easy for them to pass something on to a colleague or pass you a colleague's email. And then you can then email the colleague and be like, hey, Chris said that you'd be interested in this, which is more likely to get his attention than, hey, Chris, are you interested in this? Do your homework, so see what they've written about before. Like, go onto these blog sites and don't just say, oh, hey, look, so-and-so seems to get loads of hits, I'm going to contact them. The odds are they're getting more emails than anyone else. Go after like the young writer who's been writing about 3D printing or who wrote like a really good opinion piece on like why it's completely overhyped, and reach out to them and tell them you like the piece. Like I said, avoid generic emails. It's not like pregnancy, it's a bit more like dating. You wouldn't go up to a girl at a bar with a little line book and just start reading out of it. Don't do that to the press either. Like, try and find something unique. Tell them there's a story that you liked without sounding too pathetic. And do tailor every email a little bit. And then make their lives a bit easier. Produce a press kit. Every launch I've done, we've had a press kit. And it's varied in what it's had, but I mean, it's had a video. So very early on, when we first went out to them, we sent them a really bad video of a 3D look, but it got the concept across. The final press kit had a video, a press release, a bunch of good images, bios of the founders, because they want that kind of thing. And then with previous startups, we've also done a sample story, so that they can copy and paste. It's not a bad thing, they're just busy. And if you can provide a pre-written paragraph, it can be helpful. And then be strategic and be creative. And what I mean by that, and this is where the firm we worked with, who are called Dynamo in London, came in. We just had no room left in our heads. And they said, why don't you 3-doodle all the Twitter pictures of the press who you want to get, and then video yourself 3-doodling their faces as well, and then courier the pictures to them. So we basically took like our top 20 targets, we 3-doodled their Twitter pictures in the hope that they would like replace their Twitter profile image with it. We then videoed it, and then we mailed it to them, and then we followed up with a phone call saying, hey, we sent you this thing in the post. That went down really, really well. Like, it was a nice bit of ego stroke. It showed what the pen was capable of. We didn't have samples we could send them, but we could send them something that was created with the pen. And it was a creative thing to do. The other thing we did was we tried to bring our Kickstarter to life by working with Etsy artists. So I call it painting the house, which is like you go into a derelict house and no one can picture how nice it will look when it's renovated. You've got this 3D pen, like what the hell am I going to make with it? Like, no one knows, so they don't buy it. So we went out to wire artists, which was, I thought, the closest parallel to what you could do with a 3D-doodler, and said to them, hey, will you work with us on producing cool little bits of art that can go to some of our backers? And they agreed, and we put that up on our Kickstarter page. And it sent that message very early on, which is going to be a big part of our business. This isn't just about 3D printing. This is about creative arts, and it's about crafts. I'm happy to chat with people later about press, but it's not one size fits all. Give yourself lead time, and yeah, just think about it carefully. How much time do I have left? 2 minutes, perfect. I'm going to run through this real quickly. You said it, stretch goals, be really careful, they're dangerous. We, halfway through, said, we're thinking of doing a stretch goal. It's going to be a holder with extra nozzles. And Kickstarter immediately called us up and said, guys, stop. Like, you've put this out there. And you've got to realize when you tempt people with a stretch goal and you make promises, they're going to expect you to fulfill. And we suddenly had like these masses of people saying, will this be included with the pen or not? We hadn't even costed it up yet. We were like just riding this tide of people love us and this is cool and like we want to make you even happier than you are right now, which we shouldn't have done. So like the post was entitled to stretch or not to stretch. I think we thought we were really clever with that. We weren't. And we had to back out of doing a stretch goal that we never committed to doing because we put it out there as a concept. The message is work within your means, right? It's enough doing a Kickstarter project, it's enough building a company, and it's certainly enough getting a product to final production. So just take on what you can take on and do it really, really well. And don't spread yourselves too thin. Don't make promises you can't keep. So that was number 6. Number 5 is just pick your timing well. There was a chap here earlier who's launching something cool. He's doing it at the end of March, which is a good move, because you don't want to be clashing with other tech events. So I looked at the calendar, and Mobile World Congress was early February, and South by Southwest was early March, and Toy Fair was like second week of February. So there was this 10-day window when the press weren't being harassed by the rest of the world, and that was when we picked to reach out to them. It does make a difference. Be responsive, you guys have covered it. Like, backers will be your best friends and your worst enemies, depending on how you treat them. They were definitely our best friends during the Kickstarter. We've got a pretty good relationship with most of them still. And if you end up overwhelmed, and this is point 8, don't worry, just take a step back, they'll get it. So day 2 of the Kickstarter, 50 hours without sleep, and we made this ridiculous commitment to reply to every comment and every message that was coming through. It ended up going from the hundreds to the thousands. Max's fiance gave off work for a month to help us with customer service. And we took a time out, and we put an update up on our Kickstarter saying, guys, we're trying to answer everyone, and we're basically killing ourselves doing it. So we're regrouping as a team. We're going dark for about 2 days, and we produced what I think is the most epic FAQ in the history of Kickstarter. You can't see it properly. There were 52 questions in there, using keywords and in alphabetical order. And something crazy happened in that 2 days. Our backers started answering each other's questions. So, amazing people, right? Absolutely amazing people. So we came back after 2 days with this huge FAQ, and they got into this habit of self-educating. And then they had this resource to like self-educate more, and they just carried on doing it. So lean on your backers, rely on them, treat them well, communicate. And when you need a timeout, let them know and let them know what's going on for you, because yes, they own you, right? And they're your bosses, but they also want to be part of that story, and they want to look after you as well. This is just some bigger picture stuff. It's probably for another day. And just think very carefully about life after Kickstarter. One of the biggest things any startup in hardware is going to have to think about is working capital. And your Kickstarter will help you build the initial building blocks of that company. But your most perilous period is going to be that period after Kickstarter, but before distribution, when you put down money for like the next run of 15,000 3-doers, and you haven't got payment for them yet from people that put them in stores. Just really start thinking ahead about how you're going to balance that. And think about the team as well. We started working with people on an ad hoc basis during the Kickstarter. People came on part-time, and we had a choice. Like, did we go and build a whole team in one place and spend months interviewing them, or did we just work remotely with people that we'd worked with before? And we took that kind of remote approach to it because we knew we could hit the ground running with that. And we built the team from there with like a great group of people who we trust and can work with and who, in their own way, were part of that Kickstarter experience, which is important. That's about it. I'll be back later if anyone has any questions.
Great. Thanks a lot, Daniel. Stay up here. Okay, we're going to bring everybody back up for a panel. I know everybody has tons and tons of questions. So prepare the questions if you have for the guys here. But as we set up the chairs, just taking a final look at some of the things. Yeah, have a seat, guys. So Shutter's final, they wanted 10,000, they got 94,000. How much is one Shutter?
Right now it's 259 Hong Kong.
So what, 30
Well,
US?
American, I can't.
American,
No,
yeah.
no,
I thought you just told us that
I'm
these were
selling-
US dollars.
I'm selling them on Kickstarter for like $30.
Okay, $30. And then the jump cable is, I think this is a couple days ago, right? It's not finished yet. Still. Last night, okay. How much are one of these?
It's currently $40.
$40. Okay, 40 US dollars. I bought one. Thought it was cool. I got the cheap one because you gave away a discount at the beginning.
Yeah. So we did an early bird, a super early bird.
Yeah.
To get the ball rolling.
We copied that for the conference today.
Yeah, and then an early bird, and then the full price.
Great. And then how much is one?
It's $99 with it's $99 with 2 packets of plastic, and you can buy them online at our site, the3doer.com, or next week here in Hong Kong at Log On.
At where? Log On? And how much are they there? Hong Kong dollars? Now you can go Hong Kong dollars.
Math isn't my strong suit.
So it's 100 US though, right? So it's about 800 Hong Kong dollars.
It's 100 US, and there's going to be a big event in Times Square on Wednesday night. We'll be there doodling, so come by and
Oh,
say
great. Okay, very exciting. And Phone Joy, how much is your play?
It's going to be $69.90.
$69.90.
Yeah.
Okay, great, great. Are you gonna sell that in Hong Kong too?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So, how about play? Are you gonna sell it in Hong Kong at the retail? Sorry, jump.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. All right. Okay, so yeah. So if you had some questions, get ready. Just raise your hand, and Jean will bring the mic by for you. I think we have an extra mic. Probably not. My first question. I'll start it off. I want to know from you guys. Only Kevin is from Hong Kong. The rest of you guys are from somewhere else. What do you think the benefits of being based here in Hong Kong were for doing a Kickstarter campaign? Just whoever's at the mic first can say.
Okay. Well, definitely being close to the manufacturing, I think, is a lot better than being closer to the time zone of most of your packers. You know, if you have to wait a few days for answers from the factories, you're going to time is just going to burn away. But you can kind of you can stay up late and talk to your backers if you need to. So I think it's better for me. It's good to be here, definitely.
I would completely agree with that. I think we get a lot done in our day here. I think that's just Hong Kong. It's a frenetic, crazy, hyperactive place. And I get more done here than I would elsewhere. I mean, half the teams in the US, I think the benefit we get there is a lot of the thought partners that we meet, if that makes sense. And you can walk across the street and go to a company like Moleskine, who's had like similar branding issues. What I really like about it here is we don't end up being too US-centric in our thinking about distribution, about rollout, about branding, about everything. Like it's a very global place to be, which I think is good for us as a brand.
Apart from the manufacturing, I think one thing that I really want to stress is about fulfillment. Yes, sending things from Hong Kong is like really, really cheap, and it's super efficient. And then, yeah, I had a really, really good like fulfillment partner. Yeah, right here, out there.
You'll be speaking later today.
Yeah, they're speaking later. It's like they help me a lot. And right now, I'm sending a package like I shut is very, very small, and then we put it in an envelope and then send it out. It's just only costs like $2, $2 US. Like you can never imagine that elsewhere in the world.
Yeah, apart from what has already been mentioned, I would really stress the closeness to Shenzhen and Dongguan. This is really where most of the Xboxes, iPhones, everything is being made over here, and it's sometimes not that easy to set up the production. And for us, it's really all about the babysitting right now. Like we have to almost sleep in a factory. You would never be able to do that if you were in the US or if you were in Europe. You would have to work with a partner who would be doing all the sourcing, like PCH, for instance. By being here, we can actually drive to the factory within like 2 hours and actually have the time zone as well to be in constant phone and email contact, something you would never be able to do if you were in the US.
So how does a lot of those US products work then? Do they have sourcing guys here to help them out?
Exactly, they have partners.
And so that's why it might be more problematic to funnel together. Interesting. Who here is planning a Kickstarter campaign? Anybody here? Raise your hands. Okay, great. So you guys must have questions for them? Anybody want to ask anything? Okay, great. This guy here. Hold on, just wait for the mic. Okay, just ask the question then.
Yeah, everyone can hear me all right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so first and foremost, thank you very much for sharing an experience with us. It's been very useful advices. Just a very important question I want to ask is that, because a lot of us here who were born here without a US citizenship, and how should one approach to even think about start a project if he or she can't even start having a residence? Because we think about a lot of solutions, like setting up a company in the US and sending one up in Hong Kong, but then you have to deal with the double taxation problem as well, and a lot of legal issues. And you have to find a US partner or a friend or some brother, cousin that help you setting up the campaign. But then he or she will worry about the liability, legal-wise, about setting up, because he or she obviously is not part of the project creator. So how do you want to approach?
Yeah, that was actually a good question. That's one of the questions I want to ask you guys. Kevin, you're from here. Maybe you answer first. You said you opened a company in the States?
Yes. In fact, it's like I got lots of classmates, cousins, whatever, who were born in the state. But the problem is that, yeah, exactly that what you voiced is about taxation liability. That they may have a full-time job, that they don't want to have like extra tax liability, or sometimes maybe they're like the student, they're having like grants, whatever, that they don't want to have extra tax. And that's why, yeah, it took me like 2 or 3 months to find the exact correct partner who is running some Amazon store that he knows exactly what the taxation will be, and then he helped me out with setting up US company. And that's a very important thing is that, yeah, in fact, a few people here that wasn't talking with me, that even if you set a company from, you can easily set up a US company from Hong Kong. But one important thing that we didn't mention is that you need not only a US company, you need an Amazon payment account. And then even if you have a US company, doesn't mean that you will have a US, you have an Amazon payment account because they do like due diligence. If you set up company, you send, everyone is like having Chinese name, Chinese surname as a shareholder. And then you send every single email from Hong Kong, and then they check your IP, and then they said, okay, well, you have a US company, but seems that your operation is from Hong Kong, so we can grant you an Amazon payment account. And then why I'm really lucky is that my partner is like, they do every single thing in the States, and then they didn't change anything about like setting up the Amazon payment account. And yeah, that's really something that you might have to be careful.
Martin?
Yeah, we did something very similar. Like, so I had a friend in the States, and he knew a really clever accountant who did all the company set up for us. So it was set up for us as a subsidiary, and they basically ran the Kickstarter, and then basically the Hong Kong company issued an invoice to our US subsidiaries, so we didn't have any double taxation issues or anything like that.
Okay, how about you guys?
That's the smartest way.
Thank you.
That's what I heard elsewhere, and that's the smartest way to do it. Like, they get
Yeah, in the end, we didn't pay almost any tax because our accountant basically managed to count all production costs, everything against it, so we only really have the state tax to pay in Delaware.
Like the US company will take a fee, and then you can rerun it down with marketing expenses as well.
Exactly.
We didn't do it that way because the mothership is a US company, but that's the smartest way.
Except, my name is Ashok, and I'm building this. Hi, my name is Ashok, and I'm building this photo software and sorting device. So I did the research on doing this thing in US. So some of the regulations have changed since post 9/11. That if you want to open a company in US, you can do it from here, no problem, online, whatever. But to start a bank account and do the Amazon account, you gotta go there, open your bank account, and do all of that sort of thing. And that's actually pretty tricky. Right? It's just
Exactly.
you know, you can just fly over and do that, but again, they do the due diligence, and it can get tricky there.
Yeah. So we definitely didn't want to set up a US company.
Native Union is a Hong Kong company?
Native Union is a Hong Kong company, and there was a big risk that if we set up a US company, we could be taxed for everything we've done in the US as well. And for this Kickstarter campaign, it would not be worth it at all. So we found a partner. Fortunately, Native Union's been around for a while, and they've got partners in the US that we work with for distribution and stuff like that. And we partnered with them for them to set up the account for us. It was pretty simple, and they'll give the money back to us.
Any other questions? Oh, right here. Oh.
Yeah, sorry, I have a question. That was a comment, this is a question. We are planning our campaign in sometimes in March. We have our prototype ready and everything. Now I'm trying to, because I am not new to startup scene, but been away a long time and came back. And don't have, we don't have connections, and I'm mostly one-man army right now, so I don't have PR connections and things like that. How would you guys recommend we could go about creating this buzz part of product and try to get people noticed about it? Especially, let's say in Hong Kong, I'm here, I can do all this and I can go to these events, but especially in the US where most of the backers coming from on Kickstarter.
Probably right now. Does anyone, he has a great product by the way. Does anyone here have any blogger leads or press leads they can help him with? Hands up? Oh, there you go. So there's a couple of people here you should chat to later.
I know he's from 10, right?
I don't know.
Yeah,
And I would seriously look into what we did. Like the PR light approach worked really well for us. And there's nothing dirty about getting PR help. Like you're one guy and you're gonna have your hands full and you need to be executing on your product while someone else handles dealing with the press. And it shouldn't cost you more than a few grand.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we basically launched our Kickstarter to coincide with CES we were going to show the product for the first time, and it was a really, we didn't want to kind of put the idea out there too early, and it was just before Christmas. It was bad timing. I think, you know, if we had spoken before, we probably would have maybe thought twice about doing it, but we didn't want to show the product to the world before. We wanted to show it all at once, so at CES and online at Kickstarter. So there was this mad rush to get everything finished, and in that time, I actually think emailed 10 people in the press. That's it. You know, and we really didn't. We should have exactly taken on a PR company months before to brief them, to start that process going, because we've taken one on from yesterday to deal with it now.
How much are you spending on that approximately?
Only a couple of grand.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely get PR firm lined up way before. Start making the connections. You know, prep them and everything.
One thing to add is you don't need a lot of stories. Like, you don't need that whole list of stories on day one. You need 4 or 5 key stories to go out, preferably at the same time. And then the other guys are like, oh no, I'm missing out, I better write about it. And that's what happened to us. Like, it's like we laid little bombs over the castle, and then they all blew up at the same time, so it looked like it was noisier than it was. And then everyone else started writing about it, and it got really, really noisy. Just be strategic.
Kevin, I want to know, how did you get on all those American channels, news channels? With all those lovely ladies who apparently don't know how to use technology. So, how did that? I mean, that's a great thing that you talk about, because you know, your target audience is not the geeks that know how to use these things, right? They're normal people who are going to come to Kickstarter and just want to back something cool, and then you're able to do this and probably open a whole different audience you never thought of. So, can you talk about how did you get those newscasts to cover you?
Well, I did all the silly thing when I was running Kickstarter, okay? I didn't engage a PR firm, in fact. Well, depends on whether silly or not, because I spend money on the tooling instead of spending money on PR, because I have limited amount of money, and then I quit my job, I had my kid, I have my mortgage, those kind of stuff. And yeah, I just don't even have those kind of like extra few $1,000 for the PR company, and then I don't even know that they're good or not. It's like, spend on PR, I don't have experience in that before, and I didn't spend money. But after the Kickstarter campaign, I started exploring, and then I did a lot of like background check, because after Kickstarter campaign or in the course of Kickstarter campaign, a lot of PR companies approach you, and then KickTrack is a very, very good tools that you can look into it, and people say, okay, I was helping that particular project, and then you look into KickTrack, and then okay. By the inception of that PR firm, you really don't see anything. Don't see any blog, or don't see any media, and then, okay, forget about that one. So you look into their profile and see, okay, pick the one that you can afford and the one that maybe your target audience. So pretty much a lot of PR start after my Kickstarter campaign. And then we're doing pretty good after Kickstarter campaign, but yeah, it's not such an awesome story on Kickstarter, but yeah, afterward we did pretty well. Because we do a lot of like research.
And you seem like you target a lot of photography bloggers?
Yeah.
Not just gadget bloggers?
And of course, it's like, even targeting PR firm, you do have to like think about a lot of story angles that how you're going to pitch to them. And it's not just as easy as, okay, I just hand off everything to you guys, but you have to sit down with them and think about, okay, what's the best channel that you want to target at, and we got a really good timing before Christmas. Yeah, because it's like they have a lot of like holiday features, gifts features, and then yeah, I send a sample to them, and then they just love it. And selfie is the word of the years. Yeah.
You, Martin.
Yeah, I think Daniel already covered it very well in his talk. I think we did a very similar approach. So we were researching well like similar Kickstarter projects, what news outlets and blogs had been covering them. So we were looking all these up, and then we were looking up authors that were covering similar products such as ours. And then we were approaching them already a couple of weeks before we were launching. We were like, hey, we have this product. We were attaching like a few photos, even like a small deck with all the features and what it does. And then we approached them like whether they want to cover it, and we're going to keep them in a loop, like when we actually going to launch our Kickstarter. And I think at that time, I was still really popular to launch a Kickstarter. Like they were raving new stories about Kickstarter like every day. Like at that time there was no Kickstarter fatigue. You would be having like blogs like listing new blog posts every day about new Kickstarter projects. I think that's kind of vanishing nowadays. It's a lot tougher, I think.
That's a good point to bring up. So people are getting a little bit fatigued and a little bit tired of seeing people pitch them Kickstarter campaigns all the time. So how do you stand out? Besides, obviously Daniel's an interesting way of sending people 3D doodles of themselves. Like what kind of ideas would you think would be a good way to get through the noise now? Apparently it's quite a bit of it.
Well, for us, it was really important to stress the why, like why we're doing this and why is it going to change the world, like why is it different than all the other projects.
So the media will respond to your kind of changing the world?
Yeah, I think at that time there were already a few similar projects, but all of them actually failed because, I don't know, they didn't deliver a really good product. Like they were trying to have like the easy way out, and I think nobody was really fascinated by that, and we really wanted to stress like what's so unique about it. Like for us, that was the sliding mechanism and the young team behind and all that. And I think they really liked that, especially that we were out of Hong Kong. It was like something different. Like at that time, we were thinking, should we mention that we are from Hong Kong? Maybe it might scare people because we're not from the States. But they actually loved that. They were like, oh yeah, there's somebody from outside of the States making a great product.
And German and Swiss guys.
Yeah, like we have like this very international team, right?
Great. Any other questions? Right here. Oh, you want to add to that, Chris?
Sorry, just to add as well, because Kevin managed to get his product in people's hands. So when they wrote the story, they could say, we've used it, it's great, it works. Whereas like all of the stories that we got, apart from Engadget, who saw our product, our prototype at CES, so the guys at Engadget could write a story that basically said, it feels sturdy, it's brilliant, it's tiny, it really is. And that drove like 10 times more traffic than the Mashable one that was like, this is on Kickstarter. They gave their opinion on it, which made a big difference. So if you do have the chance to get something in people's hands, even if it is something that just looks like it, even if it doesn't work, but it looks like it can work, people will write much better articles.
Yeah, that's interesting, Kevin. Your product is already made before you went to Kickstarter, right?
Well, we did like a production run of like 300.
Production run, okay.
Yeah, and then just to make sure that things work. In fact, it's like the first prototype is not as good as the one that we're selling right now. But you cannot afford those kind of like expensive precision, whatever molding. But yeah, you just get whatever you have and then send them out. And then prototype are very expensive, but you still have to send them out.
I'm curious to ask you guys, like conversion rates for you for TV versus online. Like for us online, it smashes it.
Yeah.
Like the Engadgets of the world, like the conversion rate to purchases on our site is amazing. And TV is appalling. Like it's great kudos, and it's something you can put up there as a clip, but the conversion rates are pitiful. And radio is just a joke. Do you guys find the same?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that's good. Yes, that's it.
Yes, that's it. But it's
so all that TV you got didn't help you on
well, it's
your
not a lot,
campaign.
but it will help me like pitching to like distributors, because it's like you got like an awesome story. It's like you got like 2 from 3 million. You don't really have to pitch to anyone. But for PR I got, it's like I shown to a lot of the distributors around the world in CES, whatever, and they said, okay, this one is something that I really want to pick up. So it's a little bit different approach.
Different uses for different.
Yeah, different
Okay.
uses.
Okay. Oh, you want to see on that?
Yeah, one of the reasons in the field that we're entering with Jump, it's a market where people have copied each other over and over again. Bigger battery, different. There's been no innovation. So we've come in with something a little bit different, and it's highly likely that we're going to be copied. So we're looking now to get that press in the nationals and on TV, where you get a wide reach, to build rules around the product, so that people know that we were the first people to do it. Because otherwise, we're just going to get swallowed by a giant.
That's good. That's another good point. So how many of your Kickstarter campaigns are you thinking already about distribution to retail channels after the campaign's done? Is it already at the beginning you're thinking about this? Martin?
Yeah, I think we were thinking about it, but you get all these different retailers and distributors. They all approach you when you have your Kickstarter. But at that time, it was way too early for us because we didn't even finish the tools yet. Okay. So we just pocketed a massive list, and only now we've actually started to follow up with many of these contacts.
Okay, but I guess 3 Doodler, you guys are already thinking about this because this is your background already. Your toy makers already.
I mean, yes and no. In that it's like it's different distributors for the toy industry versus like we're marketing this not as a toy. We have a kit one coming out in a year or so. distributors start to email you during a Kickstarter and they want an answer immediately. And you have to say no a lot. And it's the guys who stick around and who give you time and who like sensibly wait for you to get back to them and who wait for you to get back to them with proper questions and then provide you with proper answers. Those are the ones who you want to stick with. So it's actually a good thing. It was a good thing for us that we had 6 months while we just had to say, you know what, sorry guys, like we can't talk about distribution now. Because that 6 months helped us filter out the guys who wrote you from a Gmail who suddenly wanted to have exclusive rights to like the whole of Russia. Versus the guys who actually will go to like distribute really well in education in Denmark. So use that time well and use it to work out what you want to know from them as well. Laura, who runs ops with me, is at the back, and like we came up with a whole lot of questions that we had for distributors. And if they couldn't answer them, well, then they weren't the real deal.
Right, question right here.
Yeah. Have you guys thought about using a company like Dragon Innovations when you're developing your prototypes?
I think what they do is amazing. To give people some background, Dragon come in, and if you don't have experience taking things through the manufacturing process, they jump in and help you do that. And their fee model's smart, right? It's like set fees depending on the capabilities you need. We have those capabilities in-house, so it would make sense to use Dragon.
Right.
But if you basically got to the prototype stage using third parties and you had no internal capabilities to take something to manufacturing, Dragon's a great option.
Dragon
It's
Innovation.
called Dragon Innovation?
Yeah.
Write that down. DragonInnovation.com. Okay, question in the back here.
Sorry, just one question. What's the name of that company?
Dragon Innovation.
Dragon Innovation.
They're Boston-based, I think.
But they're a prototyping company, right?
They're a prototyping company. Like half the team have background in manufacturing with Mattel and Hasbro and companies like that. They know what they're doing.
Are they any different from Cyril you met in Shenzhen, the accelerator program? Is it any different?
Yeah, that's completely different. Like they're like a service company. Basically, what they do, they help you to get your prototype ready for mass production. So they actually have people also here in Hong Kong and Shenzhen. They also have some people in Taiwan, and they help you talk to the factories. They help you with negotiation. They help you with like the challenges that you face.
The good thing about being in Hong Kong, you know, because I know a little bit about the manufacturing, is there's a lot of trading companies here that help companies in the States and in the West to manufacture in China. So I think finding prototype companies and people to make demos of what you're doing is a lot easier, and costing is a lot easier than maybe trying to find somebody from the States. I'm sure Dragon Innovation is probably one of the leaders, and there's a lot of like, you know, small outfits in Hong Kong, but if you're really interested, you can do that, I think, quite quickly from Hong Kong. Okay, sorry, this is going to be the last question, so the young lady in the back.
Thank you. My question is for those of you who have more than one product. How do you manage the balance of the brand of the product versus the brand of the company? So I think this is probably most applicable to Chris.
Okay. So yeah. So the first, as I mentioned before, the first product that Native Union did was the pop phone, or the Moshi Moshi phone, as it was known at the time. It's a retro handset that you can plug into your iPhone and talk with, kind of something that you would use like an old telephone box handset. And everyone knew it as the Moshi Moshi phone. And no one knows the brand name Native Union after a humongous amount of sales. It was really difficult with Kickstarter, actually, because we wanted to push the name Native Union, but the name had to be jumped for it to be kind of snappy. It's a real trade-off. But I would say if you can try and get a brand name associated to the product, if that's kind of what's being asked, the brand name associated with the product, then you probably have a better chance of doing well with your second product.
All right, I'm gonna end it with a last question for everybody, and then we're break for lunch. But these guys will be here for the whole, hopefully the whole day. So, you know, I think Kickstarter is a great platform to get your ideas funded by the public and the people who are gonna buy it. But why didn't you guys just make the thing yourself instead of going to the crowd? Because it sounds like a lot of work, right? Especially for these two guys. This guy's a father. This guy is, you know, doesn't even think that far ahead of his whole campaign. So why is it? Why can't you go and raise funding from, say, maybe a company to help you to do it, like a toy company or a product company, or could you raise funding like a startup to make this product? I'd like to know that, as well as obviously you're all very successful in this kind of crowdfunding Kickstarter thing. But do you think this is going to be the future? Do you think that this will continue to grow at this level? And where do you think it will, it'll be in the next few years?
So, the crowdfunding approach. There are a lot of reasons why we did it. I think firstly, getting proof of concept from the public, having them buy something, is the strongest proof of concept out there. Buyers, retailers, distributors will tell you your product's great until it's not selling, and then they'll drop you. But when 25,000 people pony up $99 to buy your product, you have power. You have real power. And you can use it to build a business and build distribution. But beyond that, we built a community, which is going to be incredibly important down the line for seeing how the pen can be used, coming up with accessories, defending ourselves from competitors. And it was a great marketing platform. So the future of crowdfunding, do I think there is one? I do. I think down the line, in 5 to 10 years, it'll go the way that I think daily deals should go, which is instead of there just being Kickstarter, there'll be a Kickstarter which is really good for sports. And you'll go there to learn about sports and sports products, and there'll be sports crowdfunding products. And it will go niche. That's what will happen. I don't think it's going to disappear. I think it's great. But I think once it gets so saturated, which is happening already, niche is the only way for it to go.
Very interesting. Chris?
Come back to me.
Okay.
Continue to think.
All right, Martin?
Yeah, would we do it again? I would say yes. Maybe a little bit later. But I would still say at the time we were bootstrapped, we kind of needed the money as well. And also the publicity we got, it would have been impossible without, anything, Like, you can't just send, like, somebody, oh yeah, I have this prototype, and nobody takes you serious. But at that time, when you were on Kickstarter, you were somebody. You were something, you had kind of like the seal of approval of Kickstarter when they accepted you. I think that already meant a lot because they actually had that platform. They still have it. And I don't think like when we would have gone like to Indiegogo, we would have raised like the same money. I think Kevin explained it a lot already that they don't have that platform. They don't have that trust, I think. Like you have so many visitors coming every day to Kickstarter just to explore different stuff. I think what is changing now is that people expected it to be like a store. Like you could see something awesome, and then you expected to receive something awesome like within a couple of months. Now it's more like people start to realize, oh yeah, I'm backing actually an idea, and it may not look 100% the same way that it was advertised at. And I think that's what's been disappointing a lot of people as well. But yeah, would I do it again? Definitely.